The events of January 6, 2021, in which a mob stormed the United States Capitol, is a truly extraordinary day in American history, and there's so much to talk about, but I just want to briefly discuss a few of the important things that are related to some of the topics we're discussing in this course, and in this first module in particular. First of all, there's grave concern among many about President Trump's behavior during his last 2 weeks in office, and people have talked a lot about invoking the 25th Amendment to remove the president from office. That is a highly unrealistic prospect because in order to evoke the 25th Amendment, first the Vice President and a majority of the Cabinet have to vote to temporarily at least remove him, and then they report that in written fashion to Congress. Once that happens, the Vice President takes over, but in order to get his powers back, all the president needs to do is send a letter to Congress saying that there is no inability on his part to continue acting as president. If that occurs, then the vice president and the cabinet have to once again, for a second time, vote a majority to remove him from office, and then it goes to Congress, and it requires a 2/3 majority vote to remove the president from office. And as a result, this is actually a much more cumbersome procedure than merely removing the president through the process of impeachment, which requires only a 2/3 majority vote by both houses, or a majority by the House of Representatives and a 2/3 majority vote by the United States Senate. So it's actually easier to impeach a president than it is to remove them under the 25th Amendment. So I think the prospect of removing President Trump within the last couple of weeks of his term are highly unlikely. One other thing that I want to mention is that Facebook has now banned the president until the end of his term, and Twitter has suspended his account for 12 hours and may follow suit. Does this violate the free speech clause of the Constitution? This is something we'll be talking about in Module 3. But the answer, quite frankly, is no, it does not. The free speech clause only applies to the government, and the government cannot infringe upon your right to freedom of speech. But private corporations like Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, they have no constitutional obligation to host any content, and in fact, they may be liable for content that they host in certain circumstances, and so they may have an incentive to remove that kind of content, and so the president has no free speech claim regarding his banning from social media.